It is raining somewhere within 100 miles of you right now. You know that because you looked at a window, not because it changes anything. You might even like the sound of it. Here is the part nobody mentions. For most of human history, rain was the most dangerous weather a body could meet. Not the cold season, not the heat. Rain. Here is the number that should stop you. Water pulls heat out of a body about 25 times faster than air. Read that again. 25 times. Air at 10 degrees is a mild afternoon. Water at 10 degrees is a countdown. So the real question was never how our ancestors handled winter. Winter is dry. Winter you can wear. The question is what they did on an ordinary wet afternoon at +10 with no roof and no fire. Every layer of this is worse than the one above. Let's go. Let's start with the physics because the physics is why every other answer here exists. Your body runs at 37 degrees. It holds that number by making heat and keeping it. At rest, you produce about 100 watts. That is one dim light bulb running inside your chest. 100 watts is enough. It is enough because dry air is a terrible conductor. Air sits against your skin and does almost nothing. It warms up, it stays put, and it becomes a jacket made of nothing. Now soak that skin. Water conducts about 25 times better. The jacket made of nothing is gone. Instead of warming a thin layer and holding it, you are now heating the whole sky. And it keeps arriving. A steady downpour can drop 50 millimeters in an hour. Every drop lands cold and leaves warm. You paid for that. Then the wind shows up, and the arithmetic gets worse. Moving air strips the water off you, and evaporation takes even more heat with it. That is not one problem. That is 3 problems stacked. Conduction, evaporation, convection. A wet body in wind at 10 degrees can shed heat 10 times faster than a dry one. 100 watts in, 1,000 watts out. You cannot win that. Nobody can win that. So the body starts fighting, and it fights the only way it knows. First, it shuts the doors. Blood pulls back from your hands and feet, deep into the trunk. Your fingers go clumsy in about 10 minutes. That matters more than it sounds. Then it starts the engine, shivering. Shivering can raise your heat production 5 times over resting. It is genuinely impressive. It is also expensive. It runs on sugar stored in muscle. You carry maybe 2,000 of those calories. Shivering hard eats through them in a few hours. And here's the trap. When the sugar is gone, the shivering stops. Not because you are warm, because the fuel ran out. Watch the numbers fall. 37 is normal. 35 and you are clumsy and slurring. 32 and the shivering ends and the thinking goes with it. 28 and the heart loses its rhythm. Nothing about that list requires snow. Most cases of serious exposure happen between 0 and 10 degrees, not at -30. -30 is honest. You can see it, you respect it, you dress for it. +8 and raining is a liar. It feels like a walk. Now get the scale right because this was never an occasional problem. We evolved in East Africa. East Africa does not have one wet season. It has 2. The long rains run from March to May. The short rains come back in October. That is roughly 4 months a year with water falling on you. A third of your life, every year, spent managing this one thing. And it is not English drizzle. It arrives in columns. 50 millimeters in an hour is ordinary. Then the sun returns and the ground steams. Now walk north with the first modern humans and the deal gets worse. Northern Europe sits wet at 8 degrees for months at a time. That is the worst combination on the whole list. Warm enough that nothing freezes, cold enough to empty you, wet the entire time. There is a reason the tailoring gets serious the further north people go. Now put clothes on the problem, because that is the obvious answer and it only half works. Dry insulation works by trapping air. Fur, wool, down, feathers, all the same trick. The material is not the warmth. The still air inside it is the warmth. Soak it, and that air is gone. Water takes the space. Wet down loses about 90% of its insulation. 90%. And it is worse than losing it because now you are carrying the water. A soaked hide can hold several kilograms. You are wearing a cold weight and walking with it. This is why wool is special. Wool keeps its crimp when wet and still holds some air. Wool arrives with domestic sheep about 10,000 years ago. For the 2 million years before that, wet clothing was mostly a liability. Sometimes the smartest move was to take it off and keep moving. Now the second layer, and this one is about your skin specifically. Look at what every other mammal in the rain has, and you do not. A dog has guard hairs, long, stiff, oiled, angled to send water off the body. Under them sits a dense undercoat that stays dry. 2 layers, 2 jobs. And when a dog is done, it shakes. Researchers measured that shake. It removes about 70% of the water in under 1 second. 70%, 1 second, no energy cost worth mentioning. Try that with a wet shirt. A sheep does something better. Wool holds its structure when soaked and keeps insulating. A duck runs oil through its feathers on purpose. It has a gland for it and it uses it daily. Now you have about 5 million hair follicles. Roughly the same count as a chimpanzee. The difference is that yours grow almost nothing.
You have no guard hairs, you have no undercoat, you have no waterproof layer at all. What you have instead is 2 million sweat glands. Daniel Lieberman and others have spent decades on why. The answer is running in heat. We traded fur for a cooling system. It is the best cooling system in the animal kingdom. A human can run down a horse in the sun. Over 30 kilometers in real heat, we win. Nothing else sweats like this. It made us the strangest hunter on the savannah. But a cooling system is exactly the wrong thing to own in a cold rain. You are a naked animal, optimized for shedding heat, standing in the one weather that sheds it for you. That is the joke evolution left in the design. We are built to be too hot. And there's one more detail people miss. Rain does not stop at the skin. Sit on wet ground and you lose heat straight into the earth by contact. Ground conducts far better than air. 6 hours on cold, wet stone will empty you. So the enemy was never only the sky. It was the sky, then the ground, then the wind. Now the third layer, and this is the one that turns discomfort into a real problem. Fire. Everything our ancestors had ran through fire. Warmth, cooked food, light, safety at night. Fire is not one tool. It is the platform every other tool sits on. And rain takes it away in about 4 minutes. Start with making one. A friction set needs 3 dry things. Dry board, dry spindle, dry tinder. All 3. The tinder is the hard part. It has to hold a coal the size of a match head. Damp tinder does not do that. It smokes, it goes gray, and it quits. You do not need a puddle to lose it. High humidity in the air is enough on its own. 60% and it gets difficult. 80% and a friction set is close to hopeless. So the day it rains is the day you cannot make new fire. That is not an inconvenience. That is why keeping an existing fire alive was a job with a person attached to it. So if you cannot make fire in the wet, you carry it. This is documented all over the ethnographic record. A slow coal in a bundle, punkwood, dry fungus, bark wrappings, fed, checked, never allowed to go out. Aboriginal Australians carried fire sticks across country. So did people in Tasmania. A carried coal can hold for many hours if somebody is watching it. That is the whole point. Somebody is watching it. Fire in the rain is not really a technology. It is a shift. It means one person in the group has a job that never stops, in the wet, all night. And when it does go out, everybody waits for dry weather. Think about that as a schedule. Your warmth, your cooking, and your light are on hold until the sky agrees. And a fire in the open, in rain, is a losing argument. Water lands on the fuel bed and takes the heat. You can build a roof over it. You can build a wall. You can carry a coal in a bundle. Every one of those is an answer to rain, and every one of them costs work. So the whole survival stack has a single weather condition that switches it off. Not winter. Winter is when fire works best because everything is frozen and dry. Rain. Now the part that makes rain worse than anything else on the weather list. You have to sleep. 7 or 8 hours every night, unconscious. Awake, you can manage water. You move, you shelter, you adjust, you feed the fire. Asleep, you can do none of it. You lie still and your heat production drops. Core temperature falls about 0.5 degrees overnight on its own. That is normal and healthy. Now add a leaking roof and a wet hide under your hip. The one state where you cannot notice a problem is the state that fills a third of your day. This is why bedding turns up before pottery, before farming, before almost everything. A mattress is not luxury. A mattress is the part of the night you can still control. And there is a second cost that has nothing to do with your body. Rain ruins food. Not dramatically, reliably. Before salt and before pots, preserving meat meant drying it. Strips, air, sun. Drying needs dry air. 3 wet days and the strips spoil instead. So the wet season is exactly when storage stops working. Honey goes watery. Ground seed cakes and turns. Skins rot instead of curing. Rain does not only cost you heat tonight, it costs you the store you were building for later. 2 problems from one weather, arriving together. That is the pattern of this whole story. Now the archaeology, because this is where it stops being an argument and starts being evidence. Go to Sibudu Cave in South Africa. It is a rock shelter under a sandstone overhang. Lynn Wadley and her team dug it, and they found something almost nobody finds. Bedding. Actual bedding, 77,000 years old. Layers of sedge and rushes cut and laid down as a mattress, compressed into sheets you can still see. That alone would be remarkable. The detail on top of it is better. Some layers include leaves from one specific tree, Cryptocarya woodii. That tree carries compounds that insects avoid. Chemists checked. So they were not grabbing whatever grass sat nearest. They picked one species on purpose. And they maintained it. Every so often the old bedding was cleared with fire and a fresh layer laid on top. Now ask why bedding matters for a video about rain. Because bedding is not softness. Bedding is separation. A cave floor is cold and damp. Lying on it drains you all night by contact. 10 centimeters of dry sedge between your body and wet stone changes the whole equation. That is a rain technology, invented before anyone farmed anything. And look where they chose to live. An overhang, a rock roof with an open front. Not deep in a cave, where the air is still and the water seeps. Under the lip. Dry floor, open view, smoke escapes, rain lands somewhere else. Every rock shelter on Earth was chosen by someone who understood the problem. You were not designed to be rained on. Read that again, because it is the center of this whole story. Every other big weather problem has a body solution somewhere in the animal kingdom. Cold has fur and fat, heat has sweat and shade. Drought has kidneys that concentrate, wet has oil and guard hairs and a shake that clears 70% in a second. You got none of it. You got hands and a brain and the ability to notice an overhang. So the answer to rain was never in the body. It was always outside it. Which means rain did something no other weather did. It forced us to build, not to adapt, to manufacture. Some of you are thinking this is overblown. People live in rainforests right now and they are fine. Fair question, and the answer is in what those people build. Nobody in a wet forest sleeps on the ground. The platform goes up on posts. The roof goes on before the walls. Often there are no walls at all. Bedding is raised, fire is under cover, and the whole structure is about one thing. Staying dry is not a comfort in those places. It is the first item on the list. The people who live in rain hardest are the people who build for it hardest. That is the answer. Look at the Hadza in Tanzania, who still forage for a living. Their year splits in 2, and their housing splits with it. In the dry season, camp is light. Grass, quick to make, barely a wall on it. When the rains come, they move to rock shelters and build heavier. Same people, same skills. 2 different answers, sorted by weather. Nobody chose the heavy option for fun. They chose it in March. Now the experiment, because the archaeology tells you what they did and not what it cost. For that, we go to Britain and a man named Griffith Pugh. Pugh was a physiologist. He worked on Everest, on altitude, on heat, on cold. In 1964, he looked into what happened on a hill walking competition in the Peak District. The conditions were not extreme, above freezing, rain, and wind. The walkers were fit and equipped by the standards of the day, and it went badly wrong anyway.
Pugh did not stop at the report. He took the question into the field. He put volunteers in wet clothing, in wind, at temperatures well above freezing, and measured them. Core temperature fell. It fell in people who were walking, working, generating heat. That is the finding, and it is the whole argument in one line. You do not need cold to lose the fight. You need wet, wind, and time. The wet clothing was the variable. Take the water out and the same air is harmless. So we have a hill in England proving what a cave floor in South Africa implies. Two very different kinds of evidence, one conclusion. And there is a modern number that makes it concrete. Trench foot. In the first winter of the First World War, the British Army recorded around 20,000 cases. 20,000 in a few months in men with boots, wool, and rations. The temperature in those trenches was not remarkable. The water was. Standing wet for days does damage that has nothing to do with freezing. Now come back to the ancient world and watch what people built once they understood this. Go to Ohalo Two, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. 23,000 years old. It survived because it was underwater for most of that time. 6 brush huts. Floors of grass laid deliberately in one case in a ring around a hearth. Bedding again. 23,000 years ago on purpose. Then go to the other end of the world. Monte Verde in southern Chile. 14,500 years old in a cold, wet, temperate forest. Tom Dillahay excavated it, and it survived for the same reason Ohalo did. Waterlogged ground. What was preserved is a list of answers to rain. Wooden frames. Hides, still with the impressions of the stakes that held them down. A long shelter with separate hearths. Somebody in Chile, 14,000 years ago, was pinning animal skin over a wooden frame in the wet. And there is the clothing line of evidence, which is even older. Tailored clothing needs a needle with an eye, not an awl, a needle you can thread. The oldest-eyed needles run back about 50,000 years. Siberia has some of the best. A needle with an eye means seams. Seams mean a garment that fits and closes. Neanderthals were making tar from birch bark at least 200,000 years ago. Tar is glue, and glue is also a coating. It does not let water through. None of these are inventions about fashion. They are all answers to weather. So what ended it? Not agriculture, not cities, something you are sitting under right now. The roof. Once a roof exists, rain stops being a survival event and becomes a sound. And the roof got better in steps you can date. Thatch and hide come first and they leak, then fired clay tile, which does not. Rome laid tile roofs across an empire. 2,000 years ago, the problem was solved for anyone who could pay. Then Charles Macintosh patents rubberized cloth in 1823. Suddenly a person, not a building, could be waterproof. Then oilskin, then the umbrella becomes ordinary, then rubber boots. Then 1969 and a plastic called expanded PTFE, Gore-Tex, a fabric that keeps water out and lets sweat through. The last piece of the puzzle in your lifetime. Look at the distance we covered. 77,000 years of choosing leaves, then a century of chemistry. And here's the cost in numbers. You now spend about 90% of your life indoors, 9/10. Your temperature range at home is maybe 5 degrees, all year, forever. That has consequences you can measure. Cold exposure builds brown fat, which makes heat without shivering. Adults who are never cold lose most of it. Adults who are exposed to cold on purpose grow it back in about 6 weeks. Your ability to acclimatize did not go anywhere. It is just never asked. The same is true for reading the sky. A forager could name the smell of rain an hour out. You have a phone for that. The phone is better, and the skill is gone. And there is a subtler loss. Rain used to be information. It told you where animals would be, which plants would come up, when to move camp. Now it tells you to take a jacket. So what if we have the feeling backwards? What if the sinking you get when a warm day turns wet is not fussiness? What if it is an alarm that was correct for 2 million years, firing in a body that is already safe? You are not being dramatic about the weather. You are running old software with no way to know it. And look at what the same instinct built. Rain is the reason for the roof, and the roof is the reason for the room. Walls came after. The first architecture on Earth was a lid to keep water off a fire. Every building you have ever been inside is a descendant of an overhang at Sibudu. The problem never made us tougher. It made us builders. That is the trade the machine actually made. No fur, no oil, no undercoat, and a species that roofs things. The naked ape did not solve rain. It moved the argument indoors and won it there. We traded a world where the sky decided whether you had a tomorrow for one where it decides whether you carry an umbrella, and most of us never even knew it was gone. So the next time it starts raining and something in you sinks a little, listen to it properly.
That is not weakness. That is somebody 77,000 years ago laying fresh sedge on a cave floor, hoping it holds until morning. Now I want to hear from you. What is the one bit of weather that still gets into your mood, no matter how dry and warm your house is? Put it in the comments. I have a theory, it will be rain.